Bonjour.
Bonjour. How are you? Good to meet you.
Nice to meet you, Mathieu. I'm Claire. I taste here with Jane. Really looking forward to talking to you today about this wine.
Right, we're talking about this?
Yes, we have it here. The number 2 Rendezvous.
Yeah,
so this is a new cuvée for you?
So Rendezvous is a new concept. I don't know how much you know about it. So it started last year. So we did a Rendezvous number 1, September 2020.
And that was a Meunier, right?
Yes, that was a Meunier. So if we have like 15 minutes instead of 5, I'll run you through the entire thing. So the house experiments all the time, whether it's in vineyard management, whether it's in vinification method, whether we play with different size of barrels, whether we play with amphoras, different kind of stuff. And normally, most of that will go, assuming it's good, will go into our reserve wine catalog. So it's not bottled. However, starting from 2014, the house decided to run a series of experiments to better understand the aging on lees of particular terroir or grape variety. Because whilst we knew our parcels and terroir very well, we know them up until the vin clair stage. You understand the vin clair, when we make the still wine. But after that, we tend to blend most of them. So we started running 2, 3, 4 bottlings a year from that year, just with the idea to see how, for example, taking the example of Rendezvous number 1, 100% Meunier would age on lees. On lees meaning in the bottle, in the cellar, yes. And see how that autolysis would work and what that would give and not give. So, and then in 2019, so I took over officially in 1st of January 19, although I've been in the house since 17. We had to take a view when we review all our cellar to say, what is it we're going to do with these experiments? Are they successful? Are they not successful? What have we learned, not learned? The approach is, first, we were super happy with the results of the experiments in 90% of cases. They showed quite a distinct taste relative to the rest of our range. So the choices I faced there was either we note all the positive things, learn from it and grow from there, but reopen the bottles, put them back into a tank called remise en cercle, and that goes into our reserve wine catalog. And frankly, in some cases, looking at some of the samples, I thought, well, that's really a shame. So I prefer to share them with some of our top clients to get them to taste something a little different coming from our house.
Right.
We thought it was a bit similar. We are close to the restaurants world. In the restaurants, you have the a la carte, you have the menu. And when you know the chef well enough, the chefs sometimes come to see you and say, well, it's not written anywhere, but I've just entered this superb ingredient and I've just done a dish just for you. And that's a little bit what Rendezvous is all about. So then if you bring it back we did that with Rendezvous number 1, with no expectation of a commercial success or anything. It was a tremendous success. So when we understood that there was a concept that had legs, then we decided to look into for Rendezvous number 2. We did that back end of last year. And when we reviewed all the potential Rendezvous bottlings, that one was the one that we felt was the closest in terms of maturity and distinction. So we moved away from the Meunier, and this is 100% Pinot Noir. Can't really see with the light here. Of the same base year, so it's a base year 2014. However, it's a non-vintage, so it's 78% base 14. 14 is quite a pure, fresh year for Billecart, and our vinification method emphasizes, I guess, the freshness and the tension. Our cold fermentation is really important for that. And we took some reserve wines from 2012. 2012 is a great year in Champagne, I'm sure you know, to balance it out with 22%, but 100% Pinot Noir. So all Montagne de Reims on two villages in particular that are very dear to our heart and are very important in our blends. Ambonnay, which is, Ambonnay is 8 kilometers away from here. And Verzenay, which is on the other face of Montagne de Reims, who are two of the more, I would say, more refined cru in Montagne de Reims. So, you can say, for example, Bouzy is lovely, but it's a bit more chunky. Verzy is great, but it's a bit more austere and serious, a bit like Aï. And Mareuil is a bit more gourmand. But Ambonnay and Verzenay, from the very start of their DNA, always have a balance and a finesse, which is quite distinct. And then the reserve wine was a mix of Ambonnay, Verzenay, Aï, and Mareuil. In the base 14, Ambonnay and Verzenay are 50-50. And we calculated blended, Ambonnay and Verzenay are like 93% of the whole thing together, slicing 50%.
Ah, okay.
So it's very much Ambonnay Verzenay show, really, which you recognize in the purity and the finesse of the fruit, because Pinot can be much more chunkier and much more bulkier, particularly with a bit of age. But it's not the case here. For the more technical stuff, the malolactic was made in the base 14, but was blocked in the reserve wine on the 12.
Okay.
At Billecart, malolactic is decided on a time-by-time basis. So there is nothing systematic. We taste after FA, after alcoholic fermentation. We decide whether we think the wine will gain or not, depending on the terroir, the parcel, the year, and all the acidity levels, etc., etc. But fundamentally, the taste guides us. So it's very, very frequent, other than the Clos Saint-Hilaire and other than the Brut sous Bois, that is partial malo, because you always have a tank or two that are made or not made.
And going back to the bottling of 2012 Ambonnay and Verzenay, did you bottle other combinations of other crus at the time, or did you already have in mind that these are the two?
No, the 12 reserve is something we put from our reserve wine catalog. So it was not selected with the idea of.
Right.
As ever, when we make a non-vintage, multi-vintage, whatever you call it, blend, we start from a base wine year one, like this year is 21, and then we see how we can complement it. And the idea here was to stay as close to the base. The reason why we didn't make a vintage experiment of this is, bear in mind, this was for us learning. And what we didn't want to happen is for the base year to distort too much what our experiments was going to be. So we wanted to see not our 14 Pinot, 100% Pinot Noir works. That makes no sense because you can never repeat that experiment. We wanted to see how an NV works to more understand 100% Pinot Noir in a bottle, because the only 100% Pinot Noir we make, other than that one, is Clos Saint-Hilaire. And Clos Saint-Hilaire is much more than just typical Pinot Noir. We can't repeat Clos Saint-Hilaire. I wish, but we can't.
And so it's sort of like halfway between a vintage and one of your regular non-vintages, because your regular non-vintage cuvées, they go up to like 50% reserve wines or something.
Yeah, more sometimes. So it's true here that the base year is a more of a determinant than it would be in our Brut Reserve. When in our Brut Reserve, typically the base year is a minority. But here it's a very different. I mean, this was not bottled with a commercial expectation at all. So when people have no expectation, you're free. You can do what you like.
Yes.
However, people have expectations with Brut Rosé. They have expectations with Brut Reserve. We have expectations of what we want the best of Billecart to taste like, and therefore that limits where you go. Although you always want to do the best of the best. With this, nobody expected us to do anything, so we do whatever we want. However, and it's one of the reasons why I like this wine is it is Billecart before it's Pinot Noir. Pinot Noir typically a bit less so with Ambonnet and Verzenay, but tend to be bulkier, richer, and have typically more bitterness. Okay. However, the Billecart way, in many different approaches, but mainly through the double cold settling and cold fermentation, tend to refine that style. So here, I think with Rendezvous number 2, you are the freshest end of what a Pinot Noir can be, and at the purest end of what Pinot Noir can be. It is vinified 100% in tanks. Again, we didn't want the wood to interfere with our understanding of a terroir. So I think it traces Billecart more than it traces the grape variety. But Rendezvous number 1 was the same. Few people really, they liked it, but they didn't put it in the same category of a Meunier necessarily. They had to think about it to make it Meunier. They like the taste, and that's the most important thing.
And are these the Rendezvous number 1 and number 2? Are these one-off bottlings, or do you?
Yeah, they finished it. They sold. I mean, Rendezvous number 2 is half the size of Rendezvous number 1. Rendezvous number 1 was 2 tanks. Rendezvous number 2 is 1 tank.
And so, how many bottles were produced? I
can't give you the number. We work with tanks of 40 hectoliters. You can work the maths. Okay. Because this is heavily contested under allocation, and now when I give numbers, I get into trouble.
Okay, that's fair enough.
Yeah, it's a few sat. It's nothing. What you can say is, and that's what I told all my distributors. It's the same number of cases than Rendezvous number 1, but I made cases of 3 instead of cases of 6. So they all had. I told them your allocation is the same in cases, and they all called me and said, "You're taking it's cases of 3." I said, "Well, yeah, but it's the same number of cases." So
it's all about the quality, not the quantity.
Yeah. Important thing is it tastes great. Well, we think it tastes great. I think the nose is. For me, it marks a Mirabelle plum, the little yellow plum, which is quite typical of the northeast of France, actually. More east than here, but quite typical.
Yeah.
It has this purity and freshness, which again is surprising. It's not surprising for Billecart, but it's surprising for 100% Pinot Noir. That's what I like it. And it has this ever so slight bitterness. I'm very sensitive to bitterness. Some people love it. I'm not. I mean, I like it to the extent it provides a little kick at the end. So it has that coffee bean, you just chuck it to a coffee bean bitterness, but not necessarily the aftertaste of that to lift the entire thing. And when I taste Rendezvous number 2, I feel it's very true to a vin clair tasted of a Billecart Pinot Noir parcel. So for me, the link between the two, obviously for you and for people that taste it, they don't do the vin clair with us. I wish you could come, but it's very clear, and it marks Ambonnet. I would say it marks Ambonnet more than Verzenay, being 50-50. But
which part marks more Ambonnet?
I think that the finesse of it. The refinement of it is surprising. I mean, you have a champagne here that was bottled in 15, so it spent in the disgorgement that it was back end of last year, December 20. So it spent a full 15, 16, 17, 18, 6 years on lease.
Yes.
I mean, it's still, you would expect, I mean, if somebody tell you 100% Pinot Noir, 6 years on lease, you expect a bulkier wine. And here we've been able to extract the finesse of this terroir, which is very important in the Billecart DNA.
It's still got given the long time on lees, it's got a very vibrant fruit character, I would say.
And that's a Billecart way. That's our cold fermentation at 13 degrees Celsius. Respect the fruit more and provide an acidic backbone to the wine, which is stronger. What that gives us is a responsibility to age on lees longer. But once that's done, you can get that freshness for a lot longer and therefore guarantee the longevity of the wine for longer. Typically, when people taste even vintages, Billecart, Nicolas François, etc., even very advanced sommelier get that wrong by 5 or 6 years because another champagne would be much more evolved. But that's our way. And we think that's the ultimate luxury with the weather warming up is freshness and acidity will be a pretty scarce commodity soon.
It's very fresh on the palate. For Pinot Noir, it's very vibrant. You get the fruity character, a bit of the citrus, pomelo peel. But I like there's some hints of spice in it as well. I think, as you said, that bitterness. There's a bit of bitter dried spice like cloves and anise.
Yeah. You are on the best for us. Ambonnet, Versonnet, Verzy, Haï, Mareuil-sur-Haï, you were there on the Fifth Avenue of Pinot Noir. For our view, clearly people, Champagne is a very diverse region. Some people love the clay soil, some people love the sand soil, whatever. Billecart, we are quite classic. I love the chalk. We follow the soil with chalk because clay and deeper soil tend to provide more richness and that tends to dilute the purity. In our vision, Billecart, as I said, DNA, finesse, elegance, and balance. And I think finesse, elegance, and balance is respected. Our DNA is respected in that. And ultimately, I put my family put their name on the label. So we prefer when it respects what we stand for.
Why do you not make a normal Blanc de Noir from Pinot Noir?
We may do in the future, but we have a huge range. And frankly, we don't have enough grapes. So widening the range means I need to cut somewhere else. Is like a question I get very often is, why don't we make a Coteau Champenois red? So I said, I make a lot of Coteau Champenois red to make Brut Rosé. So I said, here you go. I'll do you a deal. I make you 1,000 bottles of Coteau Champenois red. I will be able to make, I think I calculated 12,000 bottles less of Brut Rosé. What do you like? I said, no, don't make Coteau Champenois. So ultimately, I have a finite amount of grapes. We don't buy vin clair. We have much more vigneron constraints. And right now, I don't have enough wine in each of the range categories. So, but in the future, I think we've learned a lot with Rendez-Vous. We've learned a lot in our own approach, which was the idea. So now the Rendezvous, certainly from last year, when we looked to do a Rendezvous on the base 2020, we did it with the idea of, okay, maybe one day we will sell it, which was not what the old Rendezvous were for. So clearly that triggers a different approaches, but we have not gone into, okay, let's make 50,000 bottles of Blanc de Noir from this year. No,
right.
That's not the approach. Maybe one day, but right now these are mini cuvées, experiments. 1, maybe 2 tanks to thank the people who have been very loyal to us. The human links with Billecart is very strong. We hardly make much promotion. So we don't invest in gaining new clients really, because our clients are very loyal, but we need to, it's a bit like a marriage. When it lasts a long time, that doesn't mean you should rest on your laurel. You need to keep investing in each other. That's a little bit what we try and do.
Mm-hmm. And how much does this retail for, roughly?
In Hong Kong, I have no idea. I will ask. I will ask. In ex-seller, it's a little bit more expensive than the Brut Sous-Bois. When I ship it, there are different. Brut Rosé, we have to respect the taste. Here, we have to respect nothing. It's very easy. So, and here once again, we were trying to show the terroir, not show a style. So if that's the case, you're able to bring it right down, and an aging on lees of 5.5 years helps you.
Yeah, for sure. Excellent. Well, I really enjoyed that. Thank you so much for the tasting.
Cool, pleasure. Hopefully I get to meet you for real one day.
Oh, I hope so.
Look, you have an open invite with you, James, and the team. I've told them several times. So as and when. We are a bigger country, but we're not COVID-free. So you have to choose your pain.
Yes. Great. Thank you so much again.
Thank you. Have a good day. Say hello to James. Bye-bye.
Will do. Bye.